Good Sunday morning to you. I hope you're doing well and that your week is going well. And I hope that this day, this holy day that God has given us, is a day of peace and comfort and hope for you as you share in worship, even though we're not together. I feel as though there is a connection between us through these video times. And so please know that I am in prayer for you and for our church, and continue to try to be of help and service to those that come to us in need as we try to remain safe and apart for a while. I want to remind you that you need to look at your newsletter that we send out by email each week. Remember, that's where announcements are given of things that you might need to know about, as well as our worship at home resource. There's also the prayer concerns that are there, and each month we continue to send out lists of birthdays and those kinds of things so that you can keep up to date with what's going on. So I hope that you can use those. If you have any questions, any concerns, or any needs, please just make sure you call the church office, even though we're not in the office, but a couple of days a week. We answer the phone all the time, and so you can talk to somebody during regular business hours, no matter what. So just know that we're here for you, and if you need anything, to please let us know. Our scripture lesson for today comes to us from the Gospel of John. And I'll be reading from chapter 14, verses 1 through 14. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. And Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. And Jesus said to him, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still don't know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you I do not speak on my own, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. But if you do not, then believe me because of the works themselves. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If in my name you ask me for anything, I will do it. May God add blessing to the reading, hearing, and living of this holy word this day. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Seems like a pretty tall order. And I think we can relate to that, especially with the things that we're going through these days. We're surrounded by uncertainty. We're worried about our loved ones. And I don't know about you, but I feel like maybe our world has sort of been turned upside down. I think this is how the disciples might have felt with what news Jesus had just shared with them. He had shared with them that his time had come, that he would be leaving them. And as you might imagine, they didn't understand and couldn't comprehend what it was that meant exactly. They had spent the last 3 years with him. They had done everything together. They had been side by side, night and day. Every moment since they had joined him had been with him. They had gone where Jesus had gone. And now Jesus is saying, I'm leaving and you cannot go with me. I can relate to that, can you? When my brother was 17, I was 10. So you can imagine we didn't do a lot of things together. He was in high school and I was in elementary school. But as a family, we spent time together and we had some playtime together and those kinds of things. And I remember one evening, he was getting ready to go out on a date with his girlfriend. And for some reason, I thought I should get to go along. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. And so I began to cry and beg and plead for him to take me with him. I could not believe that he wouldn't want to take me along on his date. When Jesus tells the disciples that he's going to a place where they cannot go, they want to know where he is going and why they can't go with him. And so that's when he says to them, do not let your hearts be troubled. And I think the disciples weren't so sure that, given the circumstances, that was going to be a good enough explanation for them. This happens on the night before Jesus is arrested. So we know that the things have kind of been, turned upside down for the disciples. Judas has left with betrayal on his mind. And And Thomas is doubtful and says, well, we don't know where you're going. How could we possibly get there? And Philip says to Jesus, just bring God down, and that will help us decide, and that'll settle our minds. And Jesus tells them to have stillness in their hearts by telling them that he's going to go and prepare a place for them. So, on the one hand, this should have comforted them, that they were going to be included, that they were eventually going to go where Jesus was going. But it seems as if this didn't comfort them at all, because they still were troubled by what he had said to them. You see, for the disciples, they were operating in the here and now. And so for them to see down the road where they might have to wait and go where Jesus was going to go ahead of them, didn't set well with them, because they couldn't imagine being without him. The place where I grew up was a long distance away from other relatives. And when we would get a chance to make a trip for a visit, we often stayed a day or two because it was such a long journey to get there. And I know that as we were preparing for our trip, my mother was always concerned about, well, first of all, how well we would behave, because that was important. And she worried that we would be in imposition on her family, because we'd have to invade their space and add to the full houses that they already had, kids and cousins and things. And so she worried that we would be a lot for our relatives to handle, just to add another whole family to the group. So she was always concerned and let us know that we weren't to make too big of a mess or to make too much of a fuss, and that we were just to be calm and collected and just on our best behavior. But what was interesting, and I didn't think about this until later, of course, is that we never had to worry. Because no matter what time we arrived, and sometimes it was late in the evening because we would leave for the trip after my parents got off work, it didn't matter what time we got there, we were always welcomed. And the place was always prepared for us and ready to receive us and make us comfortable. The beds were made, and oftentimes they were on the floor. There was always food prepared, way too much food, and everything that we would need to feel comfortable was there for us. And so really, once we arrived, it didn't matter that we were away from home, because we knew that we were welcome there, that we were loved, and that we weren't a bother to anyone. I think Jesus is trying to tell the disciples not to worry, because when they get to where he's going, he will welcome them, and they will have everything they need. And so they need to be peaceful in their hearts, just knowing that. But they're not comfortable with that. When they ask him about where he's going and how to get there, he tells them that the only way to the Father is through him. But I think really what he was saying is that the way home, the place where I'm talking about, is not really a place, but it's about a relationship. It's about a relationship that makes you feel as if you're at home. You see, Jesus is going there to prepare their place, and wherever that might be, and however that might look, whatever they need will be there. And I think that he wants them to know that he's doing this because he loves them. We need to keep in mind that the writer of the book of John tells us over and over again of the importance of knowing who Jesus is. You might recall that the very first part of the first chapter in John is about the Word being God and God being the Word. And so he stresses who Jesus is and all of the things that he writes about Jesus. And he is the one who gives us the I am statements of Jesus helping the disciples to discern how they relate to each other, how Jesus relates to them and to the people. And so John is constantly talking about connections and about the difference that these connections will make in their lives. And so when he has Jesus say to the disciples, "Don't let your hearts be troubled," he's not talking about a worry-free or fear-free life. He's talking about an attitude that gives them hope and a way of thinking of how things will be okay down the road. He wants them to know that the only thing that should trouble their hearts is perhaps a separation for him, and that is only going to be temporary. And so his words about preparing a place for them, I think, is intended to help them stop worrying so much. Because what Jesus is saying is, in essence, he's making a promise to them that they too will have the ability to be in a relationship with him no matter what. So Jesus tells the disciples and tells us even yet today something really important about where he's going. And he says to them that he and they will be going to the Father. And again, this is about relationship and not about place. And so he says that there are many dwelling places that will be revealed. And I think these places are not about changes in geography, not places like places we put things, but these places, these dwelling places, these homes, are places where our heart will abide, where there'll be changes of heart even, perhaps. It's an ongoing thing. I think we should think about it that way. Because remember, this preparing of a place for us has already been done for us and continues to be done for us. And so understanding how this works was important for the disciples just as it is important for us. But we can still see that the disciples are uncertain about how to get where he is going. And so then Jesus reassures them and says that he himself is the way. The word in Greek is hodos. And in Greek and in English, this word can mean path or road, or can simply be used to denote a way of life or a life practice. So he's saying that life with Jesus is not a destination or an accomplishment. It is a way of being. It is a way of becoming. And so following Jesus as the way means that transformation will happen and does happen. So Jesus really wants the disciples to be peace-filled, to not be troubled. He's trying to reassure them that even though his physical presence won't be what they will imagine it to be, he will still be with them, that he will go with them, continues to go with them, and that even as he continues with them in the present, he is going on to prepare a place for them. Now this might seem as if it's getting confusing, but it's important for us, as it was for the disciples, to understand that this relationship with Jesus wasn't totally based on physical closeness or proximity. That the relationship that they would have with Jesus went beyond what they might know, beyond the physical. That it was more than that. And this kind of a relationship, this kind of companionship, changes everything. A few times in my life as I was growing up, we had family reunions, and sometimes we would meet our cousins up in the mountains in northern Arizona, and we would camp out for a few days. And usually there was a couple of the uncles that would go ahead and secure a place and get it ready for the rest of us to come up. And so we'd have a place to pitch our tents or park our travel trailers. And they would do some work around to make sure that we had what we needed when we got there. They would stack the wood, and oftentimes they would get the campfire ready putting the rocks around and digging the pit. And oftentimes when we arrived, it didn't matter what time of day, there would be a fire in the fire pit ready to go. And of course, as kids, we loved to roast marshmallows. We loved to sit around and sing, tell stories, and just basically enjoy the cooler climate. Some of the cousins thought it was funny to tell us younger kids scary stories. You know how that goes. They even sometimes decided that it would be funny if they would go off amongst the trees and things and wait for us to make a trip to the porta potty or over to our other tent and take that opportunity to jump out at us and scare us as we walked our way. Well, one night when we were there, one of my cousins and I decided to go for a walk, and we didn't go far, but we got turned around somehow because it was dark. And the first thing we noticed was that we couldn't hear the folks singing, and we couldn't see the campfire. So we decided we were lost. And we were young, not even teenagers yet, I don't think. And so we got kind of scared and wondered what we should do. And we decided we'd simply just turn around and try to go back the way we came. And finally, we got close enough to where the campground was, where we were staying, that we could hear them singing and laughing and having a good time, and we could see the campfire. And so the fear that we had experienced, the uncertainty of what was going to happen to us went away, and we were so happy that we had made it back home. You see, home is movable. But no matter where home is, it's a place that's prepared for us. It's a place where we can go and be sure that there's room for us. And even though we have no idea what this place is that Jesus prepares for us, this home that is awaiting us, this place where we will abide with Jesus, we don't know what it's going to look like. But it doesn't matter, because all we need to know is that when we arrive, each one of us will feel like it's at home.